Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. I'm Lee, and this is Rob, and welcome to There You Go's podcast. This week, we are looking back at Arnold Schwarzenegger's first leading role in a genuine Hollywood movie. I know. What about 1970s Herculean New York, I ask? Well, quite wisely, we aren't counting that or any of Arnie's dodgy 70s cinematic output, for that matter. No, Arnold the movie star truly arrived with John Milius' cinematic take on Robert E. Howard's iconic Conan the Barbarian in 1982, a role that might well dominate a lesser movie star's IMDb, but one that, in the case of Schwarzenegger at least, almost feels like an afterthought when discussing his back catalogue of movies. Sure, Conan the Barbarian is no Terminator, Predator, or Total Recall. Heck, it's not even a Commando. But there remains something wonderfully memorable about Schwarzenegger's first appearance as the titular fantasy anti-hero. Rob, I say anti-hero. What is he in this film? Is he a hero, a villain, an anti-hero? I mean, you can't be a complete hero when you're cutting about, punching camels, for instance. But
I laugh so fucking hard. I wasn't expecting it. He just turned around and punched the camel. That was amazing.
It's a great sequence, and that was it's a strange thing going back and watching this, because I saw it a few times when I was younger, but I haven't seen this for so long. And when I certainly watched Destroyer a lot more than this, and this is one of those movies we talked about it a bunch of times on the podcast, where this is ostensibly the better movie, objectively the better movie. It's better made, better written, all that jazz. However, when I think of Conan, I think of Conan the Destroyer. When I was younger, I watched Conan the Destroyer loads more. And I know why, because Conan the Destroyer, while not as good, is a breezy 80s movie. This movie is a thoughtful, long-winded 70s movie masquerading as an 80s movie. It's like we mentioned it with First Blood, released in 82, same year. Yes, it is the 80s, I'm using air quotes, but as we've mentioned before, the 80s as we know it didn't really start until 1984. This still feels like a 1970s movie, and a big part of that is the pacing. And while I'm a fan of it to a certain extent, I can totally see why 10-year-old Liam watched this and went, fucking hell, this is too long,
I couldn't remember anything about this film. And you're saying that you remember Conan the Destroyer, and you're putting a lot of Conan the Barbarian from Conan the Destroyer. Off the top of my head, don't even know what happened in the Destroyer. I would go on record now to say I don't even know if I've seen it. That's what I can't remember about. Like, the only thing I know about Conan, that I remember about Conan, is basically Arnie being shirtless and swinging a sword for most of the things. So that's
definitely a big part of his vibe in these movies. Make no mistake.
This was refreshing to go back and watch, because I have seen it. I do know that, but I've forgotten a lot of it. Now, I want to go back to your first initial question that I didn't actually answer, the anti-hero question. He's none of them, as you've said. He's an opportunist.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
I totally agree.
He's falling into all of these situations. It led to one of my bigger notes, and I've written more for this than I have for many of the other films that we've done previously. I couldn't believe how many notes I've written for this. Speaking of the opportunist, why did he let him go? Why did that guy train him up to be a sword master? And the way he trained to be a sword master was so fucking funny. But you can't do much with a guy who's built like a fridge, can you? Well,
he actually famously had to lose muscle mass to actually just be able to wield a sword. So as big as he is in this film, and this is peak Arnie, when he's still got a hint of that Mr. Olympia about him. And that's had to lose some weight because he was just too fucking big.
But because of his physique on this, he decided to enter the contest again, didn't he? And win. And it'll be in trivia somewhere. But all of this came because he was lucky. The guy just let him go. But I don't understand why.
Well, it's interesting because, and to bring it back to that point about him being an opportunist, because in my head, I always thought of this as being the much darker version, because I think a lot of my memories when I thought of this film are centered around the start of the film, when he really is a quote-unquote barbarian, and he's going in, and he ends up in the barbarian pit, and there's all the fighting, and you have the famous quotes, and let's be clear, that is one of the best opening lines for any character of all time. Those are the first words that he says: to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. And you hear that, and you're like, fucking Conan is a badass. He's it.
I'm glad you said that. Lamentation. When you first said that quote, I thought you said lamination. Why are you laminating these women?
The lamination of the women, very strange. But he is, because obviously he has to fight in this gladiatorial kind of arena, which is cool, and I like the violence there. I felt like that sequence needed a bit more scale to really pop. Like
Yeah.
I love the armor and the fights and the idea of it, and basically almost like an 80s montage of it just fight after fight. It just needed a bigger set, which is strange because the set design in this film is otherwise really good. But he's like, all that's really dark. But the moment, like you say, they let him go or Evan he leaves, he becomes a sweetheart pretty quick. Like, don't get me wrong, he punches a camel, but it's only because he's surprised. I almost punched a horse for the same reason. A horse, I came up behind a horse to take a picture, which sounds bad, in when I went to back to Wales last time, and the horse turned around and bit me. And I remember it all happened in slow motion because he went for me. And I was like, if this horse like keeps going after me, am I going to have to punch this horse to defend myself? Luckily, he just bit me. I had a leather jacket, so it was fine. He just pissed off. But, he was startled. He punched the camel. He just happens to be big enough to knock the fucker out. But other than that, he makes a lot of friends straight away. He's doing the right thing for the most part. He's not like Conan. I don't think he's a bad guy at all. He's hard, other than the start, he's hardly even an anti-hero. He's nearly almost just a fucking hero.
Yeah. I think the element he said he makes friends. His first day of freedom was fantastic. He met this random little dude just on the side of the road, decided to rescue him. No, sorry, before that, he's running away from the dogs. He falls into a pit. He finds his sword. Great. That's fine. Then he finds a witch. He fucks him and then disappears. Okay, great. Then he rescues his little friend on the side of the road. Then they go to his first big city. He's never seen civilization before. And then he finds his next missus. Then he robs James Earl Jones's house. And we'll get back to all of this. That was basically his first day, right?
By the way, if that sounds like a lot, it's because it is. A lot happens in this film, and that's why, and it's a major issue with this film we'll get to in a moment. I enjoyed so much about it. It's too long. It's too fucking long.
It is too long.
Like, last week we covered Cyborg, and we said one of the major issues with that is every scene and every character needs an extra 5 minutes. This is the complete opposite. Every scene and every character needed a little less time. There didn't need to be 3 fucking endings. It was just like there is a legitimately fantastic movie in here. The only problem is that movie's like an hour and 40, hour and 50 max. This film's nearly 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
Do you know one of the things they probably could have cut with? Right? The 20 minutes, or what felt like 20 minutes, after he rescued his little mate, of them running.
It's Saboteur. It's Saboteur, isn't it? His friend. Yeah. His little mate. Let's give him his name.
The montage of them running.
Oh, dude, I love that. That was so
funny, but it's about 20 minutes long. They're running over hills, they're running through mountains, they're running in the day, they're running in the night. They get to the city stops, he punches the camel.
It's weird. I've got it down a note here, is the weird running adventures of Conan and Subotai, sorry. Where, like you said, surely an editor's come in and said, do we need to keep seeing them running? Now, one of the things I love about this film, and again, to compare it to something like Cyborg, which had the complete opposite problem, there was no sense of adventure or journey in that movie. And that was one of the big problems. It seemed to be like they turned the corner and suddenly they're in Atlanta. They turn the corner and they're somewhere else. Like, there's no sense of like scale. This movie has all the scale. You really feel like you're going on an adventure, like he's traveled a long way. But there are some times, like you said, with the running sequence of so-and-so, I was like, do we really need to have the jovial music and them running yet again? And I don't want to shit on it too much because I love the score. And I like the score by Basil Polidorus. That's one of the reasons this movie, sings, no terrible pun intended, because it gives you that sense of scale. Actually, we've got all these links to movies we've recently covered. He also did the score for The Hunt for Red October, which we did 2 weeks ago. So we have all these links with these movies. The same with, there's a crucifixion scene in this film again, just like in fucking Cyborg from last week.
Tenuous link, we mentioned Ralph Moyler, who played Brick Bardot last week. I found out he was Conan in the Conan TV show.
Fantastic. It's weird because, and this is one of the questions I have to ask, right? When you think of like the definitive Conan, is this movie the definitive Conan in public kind of consciousness, in popular culture? I was like,
I don't think it's the movie. It's Arnie. Arnie is the definitive Conan.
It is, isn't it? But it's just the image of him, and I think it's the image from Conan the Destroyer, but not that movie. I don't think very few people have a huge attachment to either of the movies, but everyone loves the idea of Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan. And it's like the same because, there was also, I guess, there's Red Sonja as well.
He's fake Conan in there, isn't he? What's his name in that?
Calidor. Yeah, but that was due to.
But he's
Conan. That was a rights issue.
Can I go back to the music for a second, right? So I loved the, like I said, the music was good, but sometimes it didn't fit. No more so than
Yeah.
right at the end
Mhm.
when they don their makeup to storm the hideout
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Dulce Doom. I had it written here, right? When they don the makeup and go into the red pit, the
Mhm.
music wasn't right. It felt like they were going to break out into song about how tough it is being a slave, or better yet, mixing the chocolate just right in the chocolate river. It felt like a fucking Oompa Loompa song.
It is weird. As great as the score is, there are numerous moments where it feels like it's been poorly implemented. Like it's never a problem in and of itself. I like the score, and it feels like it belongs in the movie, but not in that scene. It's the same earlier when they're having the fight with where Arnie's having the fight with the giant snake. And he stabs the snake, and it keeps cutting away to that kind of I don't know what you'd call it, the ritual with the woman when she eventually jumps off the side,
Yeah.
and the music is linked exclusively to the ritual and has nothing to do with the action that you're seeing. The action sequence is actually really cool. The giant snake looks dope when Arnie's fighting with it and he stabs it. Again, this is a movie from 1982, no CG, obviously. It looks really cool, but the music is completely at odds with the scene, and you
Yeah.
get it a bunch of times. So yeah, some of the action sequences and the score just don't match up. I like the score in and of itself, like I said, but definitely, like you said, and we've thought of two examples right there, but there are at least two more where the score doesn't quite match what's going on screen.
That sequence you just said about the giant snake,
Mhm.
did that sacrifice scream because of the snake was bleeding, or because the snake was about because she fell into a pit with a snake?
Yeah, what was she so upset about? It was strange, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
she
she fell
screamed.
into
Like,
it and then
what
she
were you
started
expecting
screaming.
it?
But
Or
I don't. But when it showed it looked like she was writhing around in the blood. So was she screaming because the snake was dead, or was she screaming because there was a massive snake in it and she realized she was about to be a sacrifice?
there are a few clumsy moments. Like this film is almost better thematically than it is in practice because this is written by the director John Milius and Oliver Stone of all people, and you can see that they're trying to give the world this sense of scale, and they're trying to. And this is a really thoughtful performance by Schwarzenegger. It's easy to be
Yeah.
like, oh, big dumb Schwarzenegger. It's almost like Schwarzenegger didn't necessarily get better as an actor as he went through his career. He was just perfectly suited to certain movie roles, and certain directors could get the right performance out of
I've
him.
got a theory about
And
that.
this is one of them.
I've got a theory about that. I agree with you.
Mhm.
Like he's great in this, and I believe it's because as you said, it's his first major like Arnie role. It's the one
This
that
is his first like proper
yeah,
leading
yeah.
man role. Yeah, yeah.
So it's the one where he couldn't talk more,
Mhm.
talk much, should I say? He
Mhm.
doesn't really do much speaking. As Arnie goes on in his career and he realizes people really don't care about his accent and he can deliver
Mhm.
these one-liners, that's when Arnie becomes a bit of a parody. But when you're seeing Annie in here and it's just his face and he gives these certain, like, just, he doesn't really have anything in the way of exposition. It's just a
No,
lot of
he doesn't
one
say
lines.
much.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is it's not so much the amount of lines, even, it's what he's been asked to deliver. So I think Arnie is at his best because he's such a ridiculous character with the voice, the smile with the gap tooth, and obviously the size of him. It's like whenever he's asked to play larger than life characters, it works because because the way he acts, it's almost kind of like just off real. Like it's not relatable to any other person you've seen. So it works for the Terminator, it works for Conan. In a big way, it actually works for Twins, another one of his best performances, because he's playing a character who hasn't had any interaction with the rest of the world for most of his life. So his oddities and his inherent strangeness actually works for the character. When Arnie doesn't work is when he's asked to be normal, when he's asked to be Dave or someone like that, just like a
Like,
married guy.
like all his 90s films where he's your local mattress salesman who is built like a brick shithouse.
Yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
just the aesthetic; it's everything about him. You're saying like, well, he's just too strange to be believable as a normal human. But when you ask him, like in this, because he has such, and we talked about it before, but what he does have above all else is screen presence. And as soon as it's one of those things you take for granted. He has such a winning, likable smile, and it is part of that gap tooth thing. Like when you see him and he's got the big dopey look on his face, you're just like, yeah, man, this is a movie star. And you can see why this role led to him getting Terminator and all these, like, people were unsure about Arnold Schwarzenegger because of the accent, because of the
Yeah.
name and stuff going through the 70s. And you can see why this movie, he's up on screen, he's got his top off, he's fucking just owning, and he's up against fucking James Earl Jones. he's on screen with Max von Sydow at times. Proper. This film's got a proper cast. And he holds his own in his own unique Arnie way. And he's just, even with those guys, I'm like, I'm still fucking looking at Arnie. And you're like, yeah, get him in the biggest movies out there because he's got that special something. But as I said, it's not just, Arnie looks the part as Conan, which he does, by the way. And to bring it back to that initial point, this is the iconic Conan look. But I think his performance is underrated in this movie.
Thank you for bringing that up then, right? So bear with me while I go through this weird tangent. We can both agree that Arnie looks great in this, right?
100%.
Yeah, from the look to the hair to the body to everything.
He has the best hair in this movie, in a movie full of
this
dodgy
is where
haircuts.
I'm going, right? This looks great. Now, bear with me as I carry this on, right? What happened to everyone else in this with their hair, but mainly two people? First of all, Sven Ole Thorsen. Who, if he's going to have hair like that, maybe needs a bit of facial hair. Because
100%.
He looked odd as fuck. He looked super odd.
He constantly looked to me like a really buff version of Iron Maiden. That's what he looked like, the band. And he just, he didn't, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. A bit of facial hair would have done wonders for him. Yeah. And I obviously know where you're going with the second name, so.
James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom, especially at the beginning, when he rocks up and kills Arnie's mum. When he got off that horse and he took his helmet off, I don't know why, but in my mind, I wanted him to say, "I'm Rick James, bitch," but not any Rick James, bitch. Dave Chappelle's Rick James.
Of course, Dave Chappelle's "I'm Rick James." Enjoy yourself. All that shit. Yeah, he's got, it's a distinctive look, and it's credits, I think, to James Earl Jones that he somehow pulls it off. Once you get the visuals, like you said, because the first thing you really get is the visual. Like, it's all the build up. He's on the horse. He's killed his mum. They've decimated the village, and they pull off their helmet.
His dad got chewed up by dogs. That was rough.
Yeah, dogs with armor. I haven't seen that in the film before. I think that is exclusive to this movie. He gets stabbed, and then they set the dogs with armor on him. Fucking, that is a rough way to go. So you have all this, and it's a proper brutal fantasy sequence. And then the big reveal is they take their helmets. You're like, God damn, they look like Spinal Tap. What the fuck is going on with those bonnets? But as soon as he starts talking, like, it's okay, guys. It's okay. It's James Earl Jones. He's going to get us over this haircut. And he does. And as much as, especially towards the end of this film, they go overboard. There's, like I said, 3 endings. The one thing that does give us just more excuses to have Thulsa Doom or James Earl Jones give speeches. They're absurd speeches. They're fantastic speeches. And of course, they're made infinitely better by coming out in the voice of James Earl Jones, who is fantastic in this movie, despite the ludicrous fucking bonnet on him.
It was ridiculous. And I loved the bonnet didn't move either when he started turning into a snake. Like you'd expect, like his face is changing, but his head, like his hair doesn't move, his helmet doesn't move, the camera pans away, comes back, and he's a massive snake. And at that point, right, I wrote down, why are people mad at James Earl Jones? He just wants Thulsa Doom. He just wants to watch people fuck. It was like a scene from Caligula.
Well, that seems to be an ongoing trend with this film. So first, I just wanted to bring up the snake sequence, which I actually think is, again, aged really well in terms of special effects. But the freakiest bit isn't when he suddenly becomes a snake. I'm not sure if you remember it from Teen Wolf. So the first time Michael J. Fox transforms in his bathroom, the creepiest bit is when they cut to him and he's halfway between human and werewolf. And he looks fucked up, his face. And I don't think it's supposed to look that fucked up, but it is. It's the same with James Earl Jones. When his face is kind of morphing and it's still kind of James Earl Jones, I'm like, oh man, that just looks messed up. But I'm not sure. What was the second question, the point after that? I do apologize.
Did I have another point? I was just saying. Why are people mad at Thulsa Doom? He just wants to
That was it. There is a lot of fucking in this film, and Arnie lays a lot of pipe in this film. A lot of pipe. You kind of like The Rock.
I wonder if that's where Arnie got it from. But every other film after, he's not going to do it unless he gets to nail somebody on screen. Because the first film they offer him, he's fucking everything that moves.
And I quite like that in his answer, like you said, one of them turns into a witch and all this weird stuff, and his answer to everything is just "Come," which is very heavily kind of scatterbombed through the start of the script, and then mostly disappears. Although you get the great scenes with him and Sobotai, and this is the reason I don't want to cut the movie too short. You have like one of the reasons this movie works is because I buy into those relationships. So when he's with Subotai, I know it's kind of partly ludicrous when they're just running again, but when they have their like little sit down and they give them that moment to talk about basically like when you were younger, you'd be like, my dad would batter your dad. And they're just saying, oh, my God would batter your God.
Yeah.
It's super charming. And again, you're watching it, you're like, fucking Arnie is great in that sequence. And you don't even suspect for a second that Subotai might actually be Jerry Lopez, a surfer from Honolulu. But it's just one of those weird things from 80s cinema where I was like, I think he's trying to be Asian, which is weird because they got Makoto Iwamatsu for Akira the Wizard. So they brought in an actual Asian
Sorry,
person.
you really confused me then. You said his actual name, did you? Because his stage name is just Mako. Or Mako.
Oh, yeah, Mako. Yeah, Mako. Yeah.
You confused the fuck out of me then. I was like, no, I've known Mako for years. The dude, like, what were you saying his full name for? Don't do that.
Sorry. He is known in these parts as Mako rather than Makoto. But yeah, he's like Akira the Wizard. So they brought in a Japanese person to play the Japanese wizard. But for some odd reason, for Subotai, who's clearly playing vaguely Asian, they brought in Jerry Lopez, the surfer from Hawaii. So, but don't get me wrong, that aside, the questionable politics, race politics of 1982's Hollywood, he's really good in this film.
Yeah.
He's charming. He's got great chemistry with Arnie. And then, what's her name? Valeria?
Sandal Bergman.
Sandal Bergman.
Yeah.
They've got a great relationship. It's really hard, and I totally buy into it.
We go back to Mako a sec.
Yeah, go for it.
Because it's interesting, because I wrote down that I want him to narrate my life. I love his voice. And secondly, he didn't actually get a name in this. He was just the wizard / narrator. So his name comes from the Destroyer, because he's one of the only ones to go back for the sequel. Yeah, but he was great in this.
And well, he's narrating the start and the end of the film as well.
But he's then there going like, Conan's my master. So you don't see that in this point, though, how he becomes Conan's master. So
it's got
really
one of the most interesting end credits of any film, and I totally forgotten about these. You don't
Conan
get this anymore.
Thing looks fucking great.
Dude, like, why didn't they bring him back with a beard? Like, he looks, and that is, I think, one of the issues. And it's really interesting because if you talk about this, like, where does Conan land in Schwarzenegger's oeuvre, for instance? It's like, both in terms of quality and recognition. You would say on both counts, pretty low on his list. However, and part of it is because of that little send-off in the end credits. If you ask most Schwarzenegger fans if he could do a sequel to any of his movies, I reckon Conan would be top of the list for everyone. Because even though neither of the films are perfect, and this is a good film despite its faults, and obviously Conan the Destroyer was a bit of a mess, and they were going to do a third movie in 87, but that fell through, blah, blah, blah. And obviously the 2011 remake was ass. Everybody wants to see that King Conan, and obviously Schwarzenegger's still keen on it because in his mind, he still sees it as like the Unforgiven of fantasy movies, where he comes in as old Conan and it's like this retrospective look back on his life, which fits totally in line with this movie in many respects. And you get a hint of that in those credits with him just sitting there with the beard, and you're just like, God damn, Arnie looks the fucking business.
He looks fucking ace at that point.
He looks so good. And that's what he would look like now. Obviously, even a little bit older. But you're like, there are so many ways you could do a Conan movie now with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we'll get to that in, Hug to the Future and all that jazz. But to have such a fantastic tease and then to follow that up with Conan the Destroyer, which is visually fun, and it is a fun movie, in fairness, but it's not good. It doesn't have John Milius involved. Obviously, Oliver Stone wasn't involved in the script writing, and it's just miles off, and then it just kind of drifts away. But it's a bit strange that this style of fantasy movie has died a death. And I think, back when The Rock was trying to maybe still keep a toe in the world of like, all right, I'm going to be the next big 80s style action hero before he just went full family feature and just kind of bottled it a bit. I think the reason he actually bottled it in many respects is because of Hercules, which was very much going to be his Conan. But that movie bombed, and then he was just like, fuck that, I'm just going to make another Jumanji movie, which is a bit of a shame. And, it might have been the death knell for any potential Conan sequels. Well, that and the terrible 2011. I keep saying that. You agree with me on the Momoa version, that it's not very good.
I thought that was much better than this.
Really?
No, I'm being terrible. Last week I told you
he's got a good poker face. He even told me last week, and I was like, has he changed his mind?
Last week I told you it was ass. No, this film is so much better. And I think the reason why, unfortunately, is you don't see this type of fantasy anymore is because you're losing
Hmm.
the audience. I mean, case in point, right? You get Willow, and I
Hmm.
can't believe we did Willow before we did Conan, but we did.
I know. I think that makes sense because for me at least, Willow played a bigger part in my youth. Like
Yeah,
again, it
me
comes
too.
back to the
Yeah,
whole
me too.
idea. I
Definitely.
had a bigger attachment to Schwarzenegger and the idea. Again, it's the idea and the imagery of Conan. But like yourself, if you told me like, oh, give me a synopsis to Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer, I'd be like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
I can't do
that's
it.
exactly. But and then they tried to revisit Willow, and right, maybe the writing on that wasn't good.
Great.
I mean, I thought it was a decent little TV show, but
Mhm,
it's just you don't have the audience for it anymore. And okay,
mhm,
this type of film maybe belongs where it belongs back in the past. You've seen that with, like you said, the remake. Maybe and we know the remake was terrible, but maybe it wasn't the right time for it.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
there's not a lot you can do. You can take what you've taken from 1982 and have that going on. We know that. A lot of the
mhm,
things in this now will not transfer well to 2024 and on. So
mhm.
I totally
The
get
thing
why.
is, I actually think it would do well and obviously you couldn't get out. Well, maybe you could because he has done the show on Netflix. I think this is better because of the scale of the world. I think it would be better suited almost to a TV show.
It is definitely, and a lot of these films that we've already mentioned from the 80s
Hmm.
do better now as either a mini series or would do better, we believe, as a mini series or a long form TV show where you can
Hmm.
flesh out the characters more.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do believe that Conan would be a better part. I do feel for Robert E. Howard because a lot, aside from Conan, a lot of his characters they've tried to bring onto screen
Hmm.
don't do well. I
Yeah, yeah,
remember
yeah.
that Solomon Kane, which I actually liked, but not a lot of people like that with James Purefoy.
I remember being quite excited for the similar reason, like you don't see many of those films anymore. And I was like, oh, it looked kind of cool. And I just thought the film was disappointing.
Yeah, again, I mean,
It very much fell into the same category as 2011's Conan, in so much like we're shitting on it. It's not the worst movie ever made. It's just disappointing and forgettable. And that's how I felt about Solomon Kane as well.
yeah, yeah. Going back to this film, I just looking at my notes, and I am changing the subject a little bit.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
after they kidnap all the kids and they kill all the parents,
Hmm.
what's the deal with the big wheel?
Right. There's two things I got to cover here while we got it. One, is the kid playing young Arnie one of the best young interpretations of an actor you've ever seen? I was like,
He looks great.
he literally looks how I imagined Arnold Schwarzenegger would have looked like when he was 7. He was
Yeah.
perfectly cast. Then there's the wheel. I don't know what the purpose of the wheel was. One, no fucking idea. Two, there is no way pushing, like, that'll get you in shape. There's no way, I don't care how much you're pushing that wheel, leads to his physique. It's just, where's he getting the protein from? It's just not fucking happening.
I loved it when they panned out, and it's the wheel in the middle of nowhere. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
meant to be like a grinding stone or something, but there's
All I could think, right, because I was like, with prisoners, they had like chain gangs. They have them like
yeah,
almost digging just to be digging, just to do something. I was like, is it that? But the whole thing
but
with
they're
him
not
is that,
prisoners. They
yeah, he's a
kidnap the kids to
slave.
be slaves.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the reason you, well, I say the reason, like I know, slaves are there to do a job.
Yeah, exactly.
That was
Yeah,
the point.
yeah.
Yeah, they went
Inherently, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So they kidnapped him to do something and to move a big wheel in the middle of nowhere. But then this random guy comes out of nowhere,
Hmm.
picks him
Hmm.
up, teaches him how to be a swordsman.
Watches him fuck. All of them.
I wrote that
Watch them
down as well
fuck?
because you mentioned his sex scenes. I wanted to bring that up. I loved how all these men take
Hmm.
him, take her, sorry, chuck her in the big ass fucking cage that he's in. They
Hmm.
just put cage bars on a cave, but they chucked her into that, and then they just stayed there. And I loved it. Right, he put the blanket on her as if to be nice, walked her 2 paces, ripped the blanket off her, and then just fucked her.
Went to town. Yeah, yeah. It's quite weird. The thing is, I think I can see what they're going for in all these sequences, like the different kind of periods of Conan's kind of like, his escape. I suspect all these things happened on over a much longer period of time. It doesn't quite pull off that opening
I
section.
mean, the
But
film is already 2 hours long. You can't really extend this section, but you've
I
got
mean,
to tell
well,
the
I mean,
story of Conan.
you've got to have the weird gay commune scene, with all the vegans, whatever the fuck's going on. That is one of the weirdest sequences in the film.
Before
Why
he
is the
rocks up
guy?
to,
Sorry, Karen.
sorry, no, before he rocks up to that gay commune thing.
Hmm.
What happened to his flowers? After he met Mako gave him, I wrote it down, Mako gave him purple flowers.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
he arrives at that commune, they're white.
There's a lot
And
of weird
Schwarzenegger
sequences.
trying to do attractive to a man was weird.
Maybe we could go up his ear and it could be quieter. Come on, it's fucking
Is
weird.
is that your rope?
Yeah, there's weird kind of like moments where somebody he's just like trying to look like out of the way, and someone's like, "Oh, what do you see?" And he's looking into pool infinity, and then he just goes up the steps anyway. I was like, "What the fuck is the point of this?" And then somehow they just figure out he's Conan. There are all little bits like that, and again, the issue is this film is already too long. But it's almost like it's overwritten. I think there's probably you could again the whole idea that this almost feels more like a TV show. That the whole story could have been spread out over say like 6 hour long episodes, like with like HBO level kind of production values. There's enough story in this alone, I think, to turn it into like a 6 hour special. But instead, you're condensing it, quote unquote, because it doesn't feel very condensed, down to 2 hours 15, 2 hours 20 minutes. And because of the scale of the movie and because of the ideas, because again, I think, like I said, this is a thoughtful, intelligent movie, so maybe more so than people expect. It's just because there's so much in there. Some things they should have just cut from the film completely, but instead they kind of keep one foot in and it doesn't quite land. And that's one of the biggest issues, that there are moments throughout the film where you suddenly start looking at your watch because there'll be a scene where you're like, this scene doesn't need to be there. I just don't give a shit about this. It's never long before something fucking awesome happens again. Sure, It doesn't all make sense. The bit, the bit you mentioned earlier where you have the ritual and the giant snake, and they quote unquote, I keep saying quote unquote because you can't see my fingers, sneak in. It's like, dude, everyone can see those ropes. These people are so fucking dumb. I think they do the same thing later in the film. They sneak into Thulsa's, I don't know, fucking orgy temple. And I'm like, they're not even behind cover hardly. I was like, how is nobody seeing you?
Two things, right? Because you mentioned two different sneak in moments, and I've got two things to mention on that. The first one, the first time they sneak in, they've just met. What was her name? Sorry, Sandy Bergman. What was her name in this?
Oh, Valeria.
Valeria. So they've just met Valeria. They've decided to climb all the way up because she brought the rope. Then, what I'm assuming happened at the top was they tied just sections of that rope, and slid down.
Yeah.
But when she was about to escape, she used one of the guys as a counterbalance to pull her up.
Yeah, I do that. That's what I mean. A lot of these little things.
Like the rope wasn't
really
looped or around or anything. It was tied to the top. How did the counterbalance work? And the second time, when you said they went into his sex palace and they snuck in. First of all, their camouflage didn't work.
It didn't work at all. It was the worst camouflage of all time.
And then secondly, what was the big lava cauldron doing? Aside from being there just to be thrown down the stairs.
What was even in it? I know there were hands and shit, but it was like green goop or something.
I don't know what it was. It was a couple of skeletons in there as well. But why was it just on the landing in the middle of the stairs?
I don't know. It was a fuckfest. Anything goes in these orgies. And it was quite weird, actually, because I paused just before that scene and I started and went straight into the orgy sequence. So you have all the bodies writhing around. And if you're watching it, I was watching this on Disney Plus. When you press play again, the Disney logo stays on the screen for a while. So I'm sitting there watching an orgy and it's got the Disney logo above. I'm like, this is a strange combination for sure. But no, again, another one of those examples. They didn't bother putting in anywhere for them to truly hide. Their camouflage was the worst camouflage ever. It looked cool, but it didn't make any sense for where they were. And yes, you have stuff where the green part, it was just there so Conan could push something over, basically. Yeah. And it wasn't even that big. I thought they would have more of a kind of show of strength. Like when I think of a comparable sequence, aesthetically, it's not a million miles away from the end of Masters of the Universe when He-Man has the showdown with Skeletor in the 1987 version.
Yeah.
And they have that cool show of strength when the music kind of kicks up and it's like a huge pillar and he pushes it over. I thought Conan was going to have a moment like that, but for the most part, he is just a dude. I had it in my head that he was maybe a bit more kind of almost supernaturally strong.
Crom had given him strength or something.
Crom powers, yeah. But it's not in this. It's a much more grounded take in the character in many respects, despite the snakes and all the fucking and stuff.
What I did like was there was no inevitable battle between him and Thulsa Doom. Like there's no sword fight between them or anything.
Nope.
They've come face to face with each other 3 times. Was it 3 or no? Yeah, the first time he gets crucified. I did the sign for crucifixion then because I couldn't remember what it was.
The classic sign for crucifixion, yes.
He gets crucified. The second time, then he makes another woman fall to her death. Come to me, my child.
Oh, dude, he's great. He's great in that scene. His whole speech and like, this is power. Steel isn't power.
Yeah.
Humans are power. And he just, come, my dear. And she just walks off. You're like, dude, that's badass.
And then the third time, Arnie took a really long time to chop his head off.
I actually quite like that. Like, it wasn't.
I thought it was great. I think it's great to just not, like, they didn't have the inevitable sword fight that you would expect in these things. So I thought that was really good.
It is, but to bring it back to your point, it's just, again, another one of the issues with the film is that I'm just not convinced that there's ostensibly 3 endings to this film. There's the bit where there's the stealth. It's like the Return of the King, just a little less, for lack of a better term, gay, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there's like the stealth-ish attack, which you've already mentioned there with the dodgy camouflage. There's the Predator warm-up battle where he's fighting Iron Maiden and his mate. And then there's the temple ceremony just to have a showdown with Thulsa Doom, which is thematically interesting because there's almost this idea that he's just a false idol. You're expecting this big showdown because he can turn into a snake and stuff, but instead he just chops off his head, and everybody just. I love that sequence where they have the scale and all the extras there, and they all just kind of look up like, "Oh fuck, he's dead," and he just chopped his head off. Like, he's not as big a deal as he made out. Like thematically, it's a great ending, but I was a little bit worn out because each one of them individually felt like the end of the movie.
You think the end battle against Iron Maiden would have just ended with him walking up to Thulsa Doom and fighting him, and he goes. Yeah. They added another 15 minutes onto it, and
you're right. You've got it's almost like. Sorry to butt in because we've not mentioned him yet. It's almost like they somehow managed to get Max von Sydow into this film, and they were like, "Fuck, how are we going to get him into this film?" So they create this side story with King Osric and his daughter Osric, and I totally forgot. I was like, when they grabbed the girl, I was like, who the fuck is the girl again? Why is she? But I had just forgotten about King Osric and that whole part of the plot because it was like fucking an hour and a half ago.
Do you know what took me out of that scene randomly? Not like it's Max von Sydow, right? You should be going, fuck me, they got Max von Sydow and he's doing great as the king. No. One of his guards is Donald Gibb, Jackson from Bloodsport.
I did not notice that. That's a great shout.
Keep going, that's Jackson from Bloodsport.
That's amazing. Like, Max von Sydow's on screen, he's got the hair, the beard, great performance.
Yeah,
like, he's a dude from Bloodsport. That's a dude from Bloodsport. Of course, that's what happens. But yeah, like that's my point. It's another one of these plot threads, which is interesting and in and of itself, but it's not given enough time, and it's abandoned in part because there's like 7 different plots going on, which is weird because fundamentally, at its core, this is a relatively simplistic revenge story. But they keep adding on all these strands, and I just kind of lost track of them at times, and then just didn't really care. And I think they should have put more of an emphasis on his friendship with Subotai and his relationship with Valeria, because when they're on screen together, they're all fantastic. There's a reason Sega made Golden Axe with 3 characters. It's those 3 characters. It's not just Conan. I know one of them's a dwarf instead of a thief, but you get my point.
Yeah, it's his little mate.
It's his little mate, but they come as a set, and I totally bought into their relationship. And I would have liked to have seen more of them on screen together, more of him and Subotai just fucking running about having a job.
But
that would be great.
You probably weren't the only one that forgot about that, man, because I'm guessing the writers forgot about tying up the Max von Sydow storyline. They were like, "Oh shit, hang on, we need to deliver this woman back. Maybe we need to add an extra like 5 minutes onto this just to do that."
It's really
I love
weird.
I love it when they kidnapped her. She's like, "Oh, he loves me. He's going to come back for me." Oh, shit, please don't shoot me.
Oh, with his bizarre...
the arrow.
That was one of the few things I remembered about this film. I remembered the punching the camel. I remember the speech at the start. And I remembered Thulsa Doom's snake arrows. I always remember those as being badass. And I was like, oh, they're going to look dodgy now. And I watched it. I was like, no, they're still badass. They're still badass. They've never been done since when she gets shot by like the fucking snake arrow. You're like, oh man, she's fucked. And although it does lead to one of the dodgiest moments in the film, right? So aesthetically, for the most part, this film looks great. The cinematography is brilliant. It's, again, quite thoughtful direction. The sense of scale is fantastic. The score, blah, blah, blah. the two things that really age it are the haircuts, which you've already mentioned,
Yeah.
and when Valeria comes back as a Valkyrie. It is so out
Yeah.
of touch with the rest of
Yeah.
the film. It looks terrible. And I was just like, oh man, why did they include that? It just doesn't work, sadly.
Did Ratchek from Starship Troopers watch this film a bit too much?
Maybe.
You want to live forever? Like
Yeah,
that's all I could think when she said that. I was just thinking, fuck me, that's Ratchek.
it
Michael
is
Ironside.
absolutely that. It's a weird one, and she's really good. I mean, there was the bit when he's burnt, giving her the ceremonial send off and stuff like that, and suddenly she has all new get up on. It's like, did they
Yeah.
go out and buy her
Well,
ceremonial
I don't
death
think they
garb?
did. I think, well, because Mako said, didn't he? He's getting everything from the gods. Like, basically, no, he lives on a cemetery. He's just digging all this shit up. So I'm
I
pretty sure
guess
they
so.
just.
Yeah, yeah.
I
They just
love
picked
like
up.
when he
It's like, oh,
said
that's a
about
good setup. Let's send her off in that.
when he said about, oh, there's no wind up there. No, Crom helped you get some fire up there. So
Yeah, there is. Well, that is the thing. Every so often they run into a narrative dead end, or even that one was weird because it almost felt needless to say, "Oh, there's no wind up there," but it's just like Crom. Crom is the answer to, as we mentioned previously, a
yeah,
lot in this film, but it's fine for the most part.
yeah. So talking about Valeria,
Mhm,
I've never seen her before, so I wanted to do a deep dive on Sandal Bergman.
mhm.
So I wanna bring back a little game that I bring up every now and then. The known for.
Oof. I mean, this. She was in Red Sonja as well, I think.
Yep, she was Queen Gedron.
Queen Gedrin, Red Sonja, and I'm striking out at two.
That's okay. Hell comes to Frogtown. Do you
Oh
remember
shit,
that?
the one with Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper, where he plays
I
a guy
can't
named
remember in
Sam
this.
Hell who has to fuck some lizards or some frogs.
I saw that once when I was really young, and I can remember jack shit about it, and the fact that it's bananas
But the
and
other
not as
one,
good as they live. Put it that way.
the other one, I want to bring up because I want to read the synopsis of the story. Right, I've never heard of this film in my life.
Mhm,
It's from 1984. It's called She.
mhm.
Right, in a backward post-apocalyptic world, She aids two brothers' quest to rescue their kidnapped sister. Along the way, they battle orgiastic werewolves, a
Awesome. I'm on board.
psychic communist, a tutu wearing giant, a mad scientist, and gladiators before standing against the odds to defeat the evil
The evil what?
Norks.
No, obviously, I love psychic communists and orgy werewolves. Jesus Christ, you had me at hello,
Yeah,
sir. That is
a tutu
unbelievable.
wearing giant. Sounds fucking fantastic. That's
That really
right up my
does sound.
street.
Yeah, that does sound like a Rob movie if ever there was one. I mean, are we going to end the movie review on that and go straight to favorite scenes? I think we are, right?
Hang on, banger. Let me see if I got anything else. Oh, just one line. I can't. I wrote down. I don't even know where I wrote this down from. Like who said it or where. You're so big and so well grown.
Yeah,
That
he does
line was
say that.
weird.
It's yeah. There's a lot of odd moments in this film. A lot of
Oh,
I don't
that's
know,
it. It was.
inferred
It was the.
homosexuality.
It was him, wasn't it? The priest with the robe,
Yeah,
with the
yeah, yeah.
robe. He wasn't groping. Sorry, with the robe.
Don't be. He's like, don't be shy, and he tries to like kind of pull open
Yeah,
his top a bit, and it's just like it's a hell of a pickup line. That's it. You're so well grown. I mean, if
yeah.
a dude says that to you, like I think he wants to fuck me. Turns out he definitely wanted to fuck Arnie. Didn't work out well for him. Well, let's
No.
end on that one then. So, favorite scene. The RSPCA won't be happy, but I still love the camel punch. It comes out of nowhere. It actually looks like he punches a real camel. And I said, I actually enjoyed it more going back to it, which is, sounds weird, but because it wasn't out of some, like, he wasn't drunk, he wasn't being evil. He was just caught off guard. And he just punched a camel. It's just like, yeah, let's just put that in the film. Absolutely fantastic. And I actually think in many respects, sums up Conan. Like, he's not evil. He's not an anti-hero. He was just caught up in the moment. He thought someone was attacking him. It was just a camel. He knocked the camel out. Brilliant.
Yeah, the camel punch made me laugh really hard. I mean,
Mhm.
I am sorry to the RSPCA, but it made me laugh really hard. But I'm not going to go for that as my favorite scene. Randomly, of all of this film, my favorite scene is Conan and his little mate frolicking through the woods,
I do
through the
love that as
desert.
well.
Really.
And
Like,
it's weird, isn't it? Because we've complained about these sequences, saying that this movie's too long. I think the kind of weird gay orgy thing, or the weird gay vegan commune, whatever it is, that sequence could certainly be cut out. There are, as I said, I think the ending could be maybe cut down into like maybe 2 scenes instead of 3. There's a bit of repetition there, but him just running around with Sabotage, I'm like, no, you've got to keep those, and absolutely have to keep in them having their conversation about whose god is better. Love all that stuff. If anything,
yeah,
cut some of the other stuff. Have a bit more of them just swanning about. I think.
Yeah, no,
Great job.
totally agree.
But and just to my defense, he punched the camel when he was swanning about with Sabotage. So yeah, we're very much on the same page.
Did they did they seem like they were getting drugged at that point? And he started to do his slow speak, and as he was walking, because at some point I thought they were going to say that they were drugged, and that's why he punched the camel. It just,
I thought they were just kind of living hedonistically to a certain extent, like
yeah.
they were drinking and all that jazz. So maybe
Well,
they
yeah,
had, maybe he was a little bit drunk.
but that's probably right because like they didn't go into it. Like the next
Mhm.
scene should have been him waking up and he's had all his stuff stolen, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it didn't happen. So I'm guessing, but it felt like that they were trying to say that they were drugged after he ate those
Mhm.
two weird lizard things.
Oh yeah, yeah. And fair play, he ate them, whatever the fuck they were. In terms of loves and hates, I'll go first for love. So number one,
Yeah.
it might not be a true reflection of Robert E. Howard's short stories and novels. Certainly from what I hear anyway. I've got to admit I've not read them myself. But for me, like Barbarian does feel like the sweet spot between like capturing the essence of the source material while ensuring it works as a Hollywood blockbuster. Because as I said so many times, that it comes down to the tone. This is a surprisingly thoughtful film in many respects. And I think they went too far into the whole 80s thing with Conan the Destroyer, where they're like, all right, let's really pare this back, make it slightly more ludicrous. And I think, even though this film doesn't get everything right by any stretch, if you were going to make another Conan film, this is the template I think you go from for sure. Number two, the cast, the big three in particular, we've already mentioned him, Max von Sydow. He's not on screen much, but he leaves, he has an impact. Despite the haircut, it's also Doom. James Earl Jones is fucking fantastic, and obviously Arnie's brilliant as well. And number three, to bring it back to him, I think this is like peak Arnie. This is the closest we saw him to his Mr. Universe size on screen. And for my money, at least, this is like, and it very much like changing times with body. I'm not like big into bodybuilding or anything, but you see bodybuilders now, and they just look like fucking mutants. They're just so big. And you see Arnie in like 1977, obviously going through to 82. Like that is the peak of masculinity, like in terms of like the muscles and everything. He literally looks just like the pic. When you think of the art which they used to kind of represent Conan, I forgot the artist off the top of my head, but he does a lot of that fantasy work, which everyone thinks of as being like 80s dark
Yeah.
fantasy. And you see, the guy on the poster, and it's just a picture of Arnie. You don't even have to. There's a lot of 80s movies, especially early 80s action movies, where the poster is the star, but it's drawn and they give them bigger muscles than they actually have. Everything's kind of accentuated, everything's made bigger. With this, it's just Arnie because he was that big. So yeah, just Arnie just looking the fucking business as Conan.
Was that your three?
Those are my three indeed.
Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna go cast as well, especially like the top billing, like James Earl Jones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mako or Mako.
Oh, let's give a shout out to Jerry Lopez as well, who is great in this film.
Which one's Jerry Lopez?
Jerry Subotai.
Oh, his little mate.
Yeah, his little mate. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Jerry
he's good in
Lopez's
this.
little mate. He's awesome.
Yeah, he was good in this. She was good as well.
Mhm.
Forget her name again, Sandal Bergman. I think the cast were really good for this.
Yeah, back to front. It's a really good cast.
I liked the story.
Mhm.
I think the story, what it was trying to represent, I think was great.
Mhm.
But again, could have been a bit too long, or not. It's weird because it was a bit too long, but also there could have been more explanation in places. Like the beginning
Yeah.
was dragged. I was real quick in regards
Mhm.
to here he is as a kid, but we don't want the kid too much. We want you to see Arnie. So the reason he became like that is because he pushed a wheel. Okay,
Mhm.
great. And then
The
we're not
problem
going
is
to tell you what.
there's too much story. There's too much story, not enough screen time, but there's too much screen time for a standard fantasy movie. So you have the two issues rubbing against each other. Both are true. Like it doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense. But yeah, it's both too long and too short, which is
yeah.
bizarre.
This is a random one, but the fantasy effects hold up.
Oh,
The
totally.
snake holds up. The magic side of it. There's not much magic in this,
The
but that
fact that it's
kind of
shot
holds up.
on location as well. This was shot in Almeria in Spain,
Yeah,
and you've got a lot of Roman and Moorish architecture. It just looks great. And compared to a modern movie, which might do all that with CG, it would just look like ass. Whereas this is aged
yeah.
beautifully because it's shot on location.
And the cuts don't feel egregious either. Like
Mhm.
when it shows his face and he's his nose is elongating, and then
Yeah,
it
yeah.
skips away, comes back, and then he's a snake. Or when he takes that snake off his neck, gives her a
Mhm.
little hand job, and then all of a sudden it's stiff as fuck, and then he shoots her as the arrow. That's fine as well.
Yeah, but you know what it is, don't you? It's even true now. It's knowing the limitations of your technology, whether it be physical effects or CG. It's knowing what to shoot and what not to shoot, what to show and what not to show. And sometimes it's a happy accident. Like the classic one is always Jaws. Because they couldn't get the shark right, it meant you saw very little of the shark. And of course it
Yeah.
worked beautifully for us. And again, like you said, none of the cuts all work because they knew it's like, all right, that's as far as we can make this like look believable. You just need to cut away to something else. But they made it work, and it comes back to the director. We mentioned a few times, John Milius, who's, you know, I think he was a writer on Clear and Present Danger, famously Apocalypse Now, Dirty Harry, 1941. He directed Red Dawn, a film you certainly prefer to me, but he's obviously got some talent in that regard. And he just knew it's like, all right, if we stay on this, it's going to start looking cheesy even in 82. So yeah, wisely cuts away at the right time.
Cool. That's my 3. Do you want to do hates?
Cool. Number 1, as you mentioned a bunch of times, the pacing is a bit off. It could definitely lose the weird gay vegan commune sequence, which that was one of the more obvious ones. And with the ending, they could have cut it down into at least 2 rather than 3 sequences. But yeah, the pacing is a bit off. Some of the Barnetts have aged this movie terribly, as we've already mentioned a bunch of times. And it is occasionally, I think, caught between being a high fantasy movie and a violent barbarian flick. You get moments of violence, but they never go the whole hog. And I feel like there are times when I'm like, is this really going for the whole violent thing, or is it like, you know, a kind of an adventure film rather than a violent action film? And sometimes it kind of doesn't quite know which way to go. But it's a minor complaint for a film which I otherwise enjoyed.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to stick with the Barnetts as well. The hair, especially on Sven Ole Thorson, it's just
it's a tough one. He doesn't carry it at all. Like, I don't know why James Earl Jones, maybe it's the voice, he can pull it off in his own weird way, but he doesn't. He just looks silly. It's just one of those things.
It was too straight as well, that hair. Like James Earl Jones's was too straight. It was like
too high as well. It was cut too high. It's just a bad. Thank God they gave Arnie a decent haircut. Yeah, he's got like the classic timeless barbarian haircut. If they'd given like him a shitty fringe, it could have really fucking ruined this movie. But luckily, he got away with it.
Yeah, there was a lot of things we're questioning, and this is sounding really mean for hates, but like the question at the beginning, why was he let go? But why was he taken in the first place? Why did they take him off the big wheel to make him a warrior? Why did they release him? Why were they using the big wheel? Like,
things at the start of the film, even though I enjoyed the start of this film, things just happen. And it's almost like, you know, there's some things which are on the cutting room floor where they're just like, guys, we've got to get moving. We're already 45 minutes into this film. And we're nowhere near even starting the revenge story. So yeah, there is definitely a few things which are poorly explained at best.
And it wasn't really a hate until you brought it up. We were talking about this.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine because I was struggling to find a third one, to be fair. So thank you for that. Just going back, like forgetting about a storyline and then just having to pick it up right at the end, like just tying it up, like really loosey goosey at the end, just seemed a bit odd. Now you've mentioned it.
I had totally forgotten about King Osric's daughter. Like it was to the point. I was literally watching the end. I was like, wait, who is she? Why do we give a fuck? Is he just is that his girlfriend? And then somebody thought, oh no, of course that's fucking King Osric's daughter. And I was like, I totally fucking forgot. She was just a random woman. I was just like, why is she so important?
The readers didn't even give 2 shits about her. Not the readers, the writers didn't give 2 shits about her because I don't even think she had a name.
Probably not. It like you said, it felt like an afterthought for sure.
Do you know his little mate, Subotai? And I'm saying his name now. His voice was dubbed.
Was it really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Oh, I'm not sure if that adds to it or not. I have no idea. I'm not sure if it makes it less racist or who gives a fuck. I still enjoyed the performance. Whatever they did, it worked. That's all that matters. Is it alternative titles next to this film?
Yeah, we got some alternative.
Go for it.
I'm gonna say this is the it's Conan the Barbarian everywhere, but I'm gonna say it's the translation that a few of these are popping out as because they're a little bit weird. So Finland. Where did I get phone from? Finland. Cones wasted.
Yeah, something's gone wrong there. Cones wasted?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Iceland, Conan the Savage.
That's fine. You can do pretty much Conan with anything. As long as it sounds
that's pretty much where it is. Japan, Conan the Great.
Yeah.
Portugal, Conan and the Barbarians.
It does. It almost makes sense because, as I said, this actually feels more like a three-hander rather than just a Conan movie. It's
Yeah.
definitely Conan and his buddies.
Taiwan, Sword of Kings.
That's too generic.
Yep.
Sounds like a Capcom arcade game from the mid-90s.
West Germany, Conan the Barber.
Yeah, something's gone wrong there. Oh, some of them could do with a barber. I'll give you that, but I don't think that's
Yep.
what he was going for.
And Yugoslavia, who I think are just coming out of nowhere all of a sudden. Like I don't.
Yeah,
we don't
this
get
is
many-
really aging it in a specific West Germany and Yugoslavia.
The wife of the Guardian.
The wife of the Guardian.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense on any level.
No.
I was trying to think if it was like connected to the King Osric thing, but it's not because it's his daughter. It's very strange. Very strange. Any facts for this film?
Yeah, there are. Sorry, I actually want to bring up another Love and Hate before we move on.
Oh yeah, go for it.
It's the same for Love and Hate.
Mm-hmm.
King Conan at the end. I fucking love the look of it, but I
Oh
hate the
yeah.
fact we don't get King Conan.
Yeah, it's such a shame, and we will get to that in, as I said, Hope to the Future in a moment. But yeah, that is one of the more because I'd totally forgotten about that, and he just looks so fucking cool. He just looked perfect, and it's like, oh, well, and they even give you a synopsis of what's going to happen in that moment. It was like kind of Back to the Future, the ongoing adventures of Conan. Only they showed you what he was going to look like and told you what the story was going to be, and both of them were fucking dope, and we just never got them. Such a shame.
Arnold Schwarzenegger called Max von Sydow the first incredible dramatic actor he ever worked with. He finds von Sydow's performance staggering.
Well, he's great. It's weird with Max von Sydow because a lot of people are associated with slightly dodgy fancy movies over here. But obviously, like he a big part of his career was in Sweden working with Ingmar Bergman with the Seventh Seal and stuff like that. Classically trained Swedish actor, and then he comes over here, clearly massively talented, but did a lot of very interesting. When I think of Max von Sydow, I often think of the is a Stephen King adaptation. Was it Needful Things? Was that what it was called? Where he was basically playing the devil.
Yeah, I think of his name now. He's fucking great in that film. That's
He's
all Red
really
Harris.
Good. And it's basically the classic monkey paw tale where he opens the shop and everything's free, but it's not really free. You have to pay a price, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure he is just playing the devil because I've read the book or the novella or whatever. And I just really
what was
like
his name in that? It was something great. Oh, Leland Gaunt. Yeah, which is
Gaunt, of course. And he actually, when I think of him, it was like, I know you're not a Star Wars guy like me, but when we had the build up to The Force Awakens was massive. I was really looking forward to it. And The Force Awakens is good for half of the movie. But for like 10 minutes, I was convinced it might be the greatest movie of all time. And I know he got killed off in that sequence, but the opening when Kylo Ren comes down and he has a face-off with Max von Sydow in that opening sequence, and you have the stormtroopers looking like genuine badasses and stuff, and you have, Dameron Poe there. And I remember watching that opening sequence and thinking, this might actually be the movie we all hoped it would be. I was like, this is fucking outstanding. And of course, the second half goes off the rails for a bit. But yeah, when I think of Max von Sydow, I think of like the highest point I think ever as like a Star Wars fan. Because obviously I grew up with the original films. They were always just around me. And then the prequels had their highs and lows. But for like 10 minutes, I was like, this is the perfect Star Wars film. And yeah, it wasn't, but hey ho. It is what it is.
That was my first fact 10 minutes ago.
And I've just been talking about Star Wars the whole time. This is what happens when you bring up Max von Sydow. Anyway, sorry, more facts.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sandal Bergman did their own stunts as suitable body doubles couldn't be found.
You not get one for Arnie.
Yep.
No fucking way.
Schwarzenegger calls the movie God's gift to his career.
Oh, 100%. Everyone goes on about Terminator, but the only reason he got Terminator, the only reason he was considered for any of those roles was because of this. This is what convinced everyone Arnold Schwarzenegger could work as a leading man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger kept the snake dagger as a memento. According to his autobiography, he gave it to his nephew.
Oh, cool.
The guy who I'm not going to mention but played King Osric did this movie for his son, who was a longtime Conan fan.
Oh, awesome. It's top tier because he really is like he gets like a top billing because it's Max von Sydow, for heaven's sake. He's in the movie for a scene, but make no mistake, like any great actor, he comes in, does one scene, absolutely leaves his mark on the movie. It's a shame the storyline attached to his character is completely forgettable, but he's great when he's on screen at least.
Schwarzenegger was entitled to 5% of the film's profits. I don't know what the profit was, but
it was enough to kind of warrant a sequel, so it must have done okay.
Schwarzenegger nor Sandal Bergman had ever done a love scene before this film, and both felt awkward about doing one together. So
I
that
love it. He'd never done any love scenes, and then he has like 18 in this
I
movie.
say, was that the first one they filmed then? Because before that, on screen, he fucks the slave girl and then he fucks the witch.
He's fucking, and I love when they're sneaking in. I'm using the air quotes again, and they see the orgy. Arnie's face is absolute gold in that sequence. The way his eyes light up, like, oh my god, I love orgies. I was like, we know you do, Arnie, you dirty bastard.
Fake blood used in the film came in the form of a concentrate, which had to be mixed with water prior to use. Due to the cold weather, it was mixed with vodka instead as an antifreeze. In the scenes in which the actors were supposed to spit the blood, they would swallow it instead, then go back to the special effects man for more. Can I have some more of that blood, please?
Just listen, I've got to do the scene again. Yeah, the one with the snake and all the blood. Yeah, yeah, they definitely said we've got to do it again. It's like, yeah, make the most of it, man. Fucking who doesn't have a bit of vodka? Especially if you can get away with, drinking on the job. Fantastic.
Too right. Hello, who's coming up with that? Oh, we can't mix water with this, so let's just put vodka in it. It'll be fine. It doesn't
Yeah, it'd be
taste.
fine. Yeah. No problem at all. Any more
Schwarzenegger
facts?
was the
Oh, sorry.
yeah. Schwarzenegger was the first and only choice to play Conan.
Yeah,
Conan.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's like one of my friends was trying to convince me that, the Terminator could have been anyone. Fucking idiot.
Arnold Schwarzenegger had trouble riding the camel. It kept walking into him into the hut's wooden beams. Is that why he punched the camel? Was this
Maybe,
film?
and he jumps on a camel in the film, and obviously it's clearly him. He nearly falls off the camel in that sequence. It's not classy the way he gets on it, put that way.
We'll end it there, mate. We'll end it
All
there.
right, fair enough. So we've already mentioned it a few times. Hug to the future. So this is where we ask the question: remake, sequels, let it die, or leave well alone. I think we all know where we're going with this. Yep. Obviously, a sequel. Mentioned earlier, I want that introspective, Unforgiven style sequel with plenty of blood, of course. It would actually probably allow for like a smaller budget and subsequently a greater chance of getting funded, I suppose. Or you could even, and stick with me here, the tech kind of died on its ass, but how about we give the movie to Zemeckis and he gives it the Beowulf treatment? Now, the Beowulf movie where they used motion capture and what's his name?
With Ray Winston.
Now and Ray Winston. It didn't completely work, but I have a real soft spot for that film. And that film was made like 15, 16 years ago. I think it was like 2007, maybe. Obviously, the technology would have come on leaps and bounds. Like you could get Arnold Schwarzenegger, a slight modulation to his voice, and you just get him doing fucking Conan again, but in the style of Beowulf, and you get a younger person to do the physicality aspect of it. I'm like, that could totally work because Beowulf was almost there. And that was 15 years ago. I think the technology would have finally caught up and got over the whole kind of uncanny valley dead eyes issue. But that would be my idea anyway. I mean, I'd happily just see him come back as old ass Conan. Make no mistake. I want to see the Unforgiven version. But if you want to do a different, younger Conan, you don't need to recast him. If you told me Zemeckis was directing Conan, I'd be fucking all over that, 100%.
It's interesting again because you've pinpointed on Arnie and the character of Conan, but when we ask about Hug to the Future, we ask about this film. Could this film be remade, or do we leave it alone? Things like that.
No.
And for
it's
me,
just a sequel.
Yeah, for me, okay, but it's had sequels. That's weird, isn't it? For this film. But I agree with you. For this film, I would love to see a sequel, but the sequel being King Conan.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That would be the ideal. Like, I want to see the sequel that is promised literally at the end of this film. I don't want to see a sequel to Destroyer either. I want to see a sequel tonally to this movie because I think the tone, as I said, I maybe go a bit more the Barbarian route where you kind of lean into the violence a bit more. But for the most part, Tony, I think this is where this movie needs to be. I just want to see the sequel that's promised at the end. I just want literally that movie. You gave us the synopsis. You gave us the visuals. Give us that fucking movie. It's not too late. Get Arnie involved. Make a change. So this is where we ask a question. You can only make one change to this movie. Mine's pretty easy. It's lose 15 to 20 minutes. And I know we've run into the issue of saying some scenes needed longer, blah, blah, blah. But there's a way to edit this, get rid of some of the superfluous kind of side quests, blah, 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 and cut it down to like an hour and 50.
Give Sven Ole Thoresen a beard.
Yeah, all that. That's actually pretty important as well. Give him a fucking beard.
Just make him look. He looked like a child who'd grown his
Because
hair
that's the
out.
thing. His mate, what was the name of the dude who he was with all the time? Like his
I
other,
couldn't find his name.
well, that dude.
Yeah.
He's got a bad haircut as well, but like you said, he kind of pulls it off because he's got the big handlebar mustache and he just looks the part. He, on the other hand, just looks like a bit of a simpleton, a giant, muscly simpleton. But that's what he looks like, sadly.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Video games. So there were plenty of video games from 1984's Conan Hall of Volta for the Apple II, Atari, and Commodore 64, etc., right up through the still popular open world survival game Conan Exiles. But the one I had an attachment to was 2007's Conan for the 360 and PS3, with Conan voiced by Ron Perlman. I'm not sure if you remember that. It's a relatively straightforward third-person action game by Nihilistic Software and THQ. But it's just one of those, like, it had solid combat, decent graphics. It's like, remember we mentioned about Mad Max's game by Avalanche?
Yeah.
It's not the same as that because it's not an open world. But when we talked about that a few weeks ago, we kind of pinpointed it as like the ultimate 7 out of 10 game. It's got its faults, it's got its shortcomings. You can imagine a better sequel, but it's just really fun. That's what Conan was on the 360. It's not a perfect game by any stretch, but I just had loads of fun with it. And obviously great voice work by Ron Perlman as well. But in terms of if you're going to make a modern day Conan game, and as I said, there is a modern Conan game in Conan Exiles, but those big open worlds, whatever they are, they're just not for me. The obvious answer is Santa Monica Studios and God of War, and like the same combination of storytelling, character study, and action. You could totally do the aforementioned King Conan video game with Schwarzenegger, like allowing his likeness and doing the voice work for it. Or you could go old school and the equally aforementioned Golden Axe and just do. They're actually bringing Golden Axe back, Sega. So do a kind of proper Conan DLC and bring back Conan, Valeria, and Subotai. I'd fucking love that. That'd be awesome. So one of those two, basically.
I had two as well. My one was God of War as well.
Mm-hmm.
It feels the right fit.
Answer.
Yeah.
It really does.
But you said obvious answer. I went a bit left field for my next answer because I was thinking more not of the character, but of what's around him, like the scenes, the layout, everything like that.
The world and all that jazz.
Yeah. So I would have gone Ubisoft and like Prince of Persia, the Sands of Time when they did that Prince of Persia trilogy.
Yeah, well, that's one good thing. Like, the same with Assassin's Creed. The one thing Ubisoft do really well, and there's problems with Ubisoft games in that they've all become a bit samey, blah blah blah. But they create amazing immersive worlds.
Yeah.
Like, if you go back to like the last few Assassin's Creed games, they're fun just to walk around. And the idea of them creating this big, massive world, but then really leaning into the violence of it all, and maybe kind of making it more of a kind of story-based game, that can totally work as well. So yeah, Ubisoft's a good chat as well. In terms of ratings and recommendations, this is an interesting one, I think, because I've kind of gone back and forth, and I've fallen into the Rob trap, and I've said by today's, I was like, this is a 3.5.
Yeah.
It's
oh, nice. 166 episodes, and you've finally given us a half.
I had to go. I know I like to go one or the other, but I just could the pacing's a little bit too slow. There are a few too many issues for me to give it a 4. When we're talking about a 4, we're talking about watching it today. Now, that is the point when we talk about this, the ratings and recommendations. We're not talking about it in terms of its historic and performance importance. We're not talking about how it holds up from a film from, but it's really good for a film from 1982. How does it feel watching it now? I'm watching it now. This feels like a 3.5-star movie to me. And I'm not sure if I'd quite recommend it for the issues we mentioned. I think for a lot of people, they'd find it too slow. It sounds weird, but I would recommend a lot of people watch Destroyer over this because it's trashier, it's sillier, and almost that kind of nostalgic 80s movie. Oh, it's Schwarzenegger, it's a big dumb action film. It's done before you know it. Whereas this, you have to kind of like commit to the world more, and I'm just not sure it's for everyone, to be honest. So I'm going to say, despite the fact that I really enjoyed it, I'm going to say 3.5 stars and no for my recommendation.
For me, it's a 3.5. It always was. I had that written down already because
cool.
Yeah, it was there. I couldn't make it a 3, but
I would have bet. I honestly, as I was saying it, I was like, based on the conversation, I was like, I bet you was giving it a 3.5, and that's not criticism. Just the way we talked about it. It's like for every good thing, there's a slight neg or blah blah blah. So yeah, 3.5 feels right.
The other thing is, I probably wouldn't recommend this film. It's not a film that you could just go and recommend to anybody. There's
No,
there's a lot in this. It's a great film, but it's recommended
it
to
feels
like-minded people.
old.
Yeah.
Well, put it this way: when I was growing up and I watched this for the first time, and I mentioned it earlier with the whole like preferring Destroyer and stuff. I remember watching this when I was like 8, 9 years old. So that would have been like late 80s, very early 90s. And this already felt old fashioned to me. It did. Like in 1990, this felt like an old film, which, is 8 years old. But in a way, that's a Conan the Destroyer simply didn't. And a big part of it is the pacing and the tonal shift. It feels like a 70s movie. And it's just simply put, like, if someone came up to me and said, I fucking love this movie, I would get it. I would 100% get it. But I think a lot of people, more casual moviegoers, would just find this a bit too slow nowadays.
Totally agree.
And it's just that classic. It's just that classic Rob thing. We either disagree completely or we agree on every last thing as we have here.
I love how that's a Rob thing.
It's absolutely no, a Rob and Liam thing. It's very much our thing. It's like when we disagree 100%. But I would say 80% of the time we seem to be completely incompatible with these things. But when we go in our separate directions, we sprint in separate directions.
When we disagree, we disagree hard.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So yeah, that's been Conan the Barbarian. Next week is your choice, sir.
It is indeed. We are not doing Conan.
He's got that look on his face. This is going to be a fucking weird one. I know it. It's going to be a weird one.
1991.
Okay, yeah. I'm not even going to bother. Oh, wait, 1991. Clear and Present Danger? No, that would have been a bit later. Okay, keep going. It's not Terminator 2.
No, we've already done Terminator 2.
I know.
Oh, okay. The director, Michael Lehmann.
Michael Lehmann?
Lehmann. Lehmann.
Michael Lehmann.
Lemon?
I have no idea.
Okay. I'll give you the tagline first.
Go for it.
For this cat burglar, 9 lives may just not be enough.
It's like, is it a Bruce Willis film?
Yep.
Is it not Hudson Hawk, is it?
It is Hudson Hawk.
Oh, no.
Yes.
This movie has been in the post for a while. All right. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I have not seen Hudson Hawk since probably 1993. I watched it. I didn't care for it. However, if you ask me to tell you anything about that movie other than Bruce Willis is in it and he wears a hat, I've got nothing. So I'm going to go in open-minded, but yeah, this film has always been pretty divisive.
Have you seen it? You said
I've seen it, but okay. I watched it once, but like just after it came out. So it would have been like on VHS back in like 92, 93 or something.
I remember loving this film. I hold no apologies for that. But it's the way they time their cat burglaries, their thefts. Mm-hmm. They time it to songs. So if they reckon a robbery is going to take 6 minutes, they sing like, "Would you like to swing on a star?" whilst committing the robbery. So time perfectly together.
Well, it's one of those weird things. It's 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb. I'm looking at it. I like the posters, with him kind of swinging about and him with the hat. And there's a sequence with him with a fucking some form of flying device. I don't know what's going on there. He seems to be very big into the hat. A lot of the pictures aren't just him wearing the hat. It's him bringing a lot of emphasis to the hat. I totally forgot Andy McDowell's in it.
Andy McDowell, Danny Aiello, James Coburn, Richard E. Grant,
Frank Stallone,
David Caruso, Frank Stallone,
James Coburn. Yeah.
One of the biggest questions is why Hudson Hawk has 4 earrings in the same ear.
Oh, fuck knows. I'm trying to look into Mike Lehmann. I know his name. I mean, he directed Heathers. I love Heathers. Yep. And 40 Days and 40 Nights, a movie I actually quite enjoy as well. So, there's obviously some talent involved. It's just, it'll be interesting to see how this is aged, because I literally no memory of it other than the hat. That's the main thing I remember.
I've been dying to do this film for fucking ages, but I've always been scared to bring it up for some reason.
I'm looking at his known for. So it's Heathers, which I love Heathers, Hudson Hawk, American Horror Story. He directed quite a few episodes of that, and 40 Days and 40 Nights. I always remember 40 Days and 40 Nights because it's the closest I've ever been to an empty cinema. I went to see it with my brother, of all things, on like a Tuesday, which is a weird thing to do for a film which is about kind of, not masturbating. And we were sitting there and like, of all the movies for it only to be us, I was like, I didn't want it to be 40 Days and 40 Nights. And one dude walked in on his own, like last fucking minute. And I wasn't sure if I was happy to see him or not, but yeah, strange cinematic experience all the same. So Hudson Hawk anyway. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Any other business before we wrap this up?
We do, yeah. We had a message from one of our frequent listeners, Carl. I had to mention him. It was quite a good message. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I've been trying for months to get my wife to listen to your podcast. And Friday we were traveling home, so I put on the Ferris Bueller episode. It's one of her favorite movies. She listened to it and laughed and laughed. She also enjoyed how you do the deep dive on the characters. We had a nice discussion on if Ferris is actually a dick, and also how the movie just starts like it is the next day and could be a sequel. Good job and thank you. Lovely. Thanks, Carl. And we hope your wife still listens.
Indeed. I hope it wasn't just a one and done thing. But yeah, it is interesting, the Ferris Bueller thing, because I don't think we ever really got to the bottom of, we both disagreed slightly on whether he is in fact a dick. He's a bit of a dick, but how much of a dick? And yeah, the fact that it just kind of starts and you're off to the races, it turns out it's just a really good fucking movie. If you haven't listened to it, we did a couple of weeks ago, worth looking back at. So yeah, if there's nothing else, I've been Liam, he's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.